Irony. Irony is one of the most misunderstood concepts in logic and language. It's ephemeral, it evades description, but everyone knows it when they sees it. There are kinds of irony: literary, situational, verbal, logical, dramatic, and rectal, but this video is concerned with irony of a more general sense. The way people execute irony in what I like to call the irony analytical method. You might be asking, King, why are you doing this? What's the point? Why add structure to this? What are you doing? And if I find answers to any of these questions, I'll get right back to you. First, let's establish a baseline. What is not ironic? Before we start defining things, let's anti-define them. An example of an irony-free situation would be a little girl watching the television program My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic. As she is not only the target demographic, she is also a stereotype of the regular MLP viewer. In other words, this situation is completely mundane in terms of general expectations, or irony-free. Let's refer to this as irony level 0. Complete mundanity. Barely worth commenting on. Earnest. Now let's discuss something more ironic. A common example of irony is a man dying after winning the lottery. To me, this situation isn't quite ironic, just a coincidence, but it certainly can be ironic. Irony doesn't imply a sudden coincidence, but a confluence of events that arranges the world in a way you don't expect, or reverses expectation entirely. For instance, the press saying, the Titanic is unsinkable, and then the thing fucking hits an iceberg. That doesn't involve random chance, that involves intentional marketing, purposeful research, and a captain who doesn't steer out of the way of a slow-moving ice floe. Or, to build off our prior example, instead of a little girl watching My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, we see an adult man in his 20s watching it. This type of behavior is level 1 irony, and it's commonly observed. People watching bad movies on purpose and giving their creators huge fan bases, for instance. Neil Breen, Cool Cat, and Tommy Wiseau, just to name a few. The interest isn't sincere, it's ironic. This is a vital facet to irony. Irony must have intent. The man must choose to watch My Little Pony, and the marketing department for the White Star Line must choose to call the Titanic unsinkable. But we can go deeper than this. If level 0 is earnest and level 1 is satirical, what's next? Irony level 2 is concerned with the normalization of something that is ironic. For instance, the phenomenon of the brony is a level 2 ironic, and represents the detachment from norms. People screening The Room to crowded theaters goes beyond natural irony. It goes from a single person experiencing something that satirically evades norms and turns into a phenomenon of subversion. In a simpler way, then, if we have our ironic subject, in this case My Little Pony, the audience is normalizing its subversion. Level 0 is earnest, level 1 is satirical, and level 2 is detached. Remember those words. Level 3 is where things get interesting. Once detachment is achieved from satire, what's next? Well, people start realizing the merits in the ironic subject in earnest. In other words, the bronies stop watching the show because it's funny to watch a show for little girls, and they begin hosting conventions, and drawing porn, and making fan merchandise, and drawing porn, and writing fan art, and drawing grotesque, degenerate, detailed, artistically realized. They remove the subject from its original context, bringing it with them until, before you know it, their interest is no longer ironic, and their group is assimilated in the demographic. In the case of My Little Pony, there were jokes and plots in the show based on embracing the new viewership. They created an earnest, new fan base. In other words, if we started in earnest, went to satirical and became detached, the third level is back to earnestness. Bronies became fundamental to the ironic subject. But this does not destroy the irony, it simply begins the cycle anew. The normalized subversion becomes assimilated into the subject. Bronies become part of MLP. Level 4 irony occurs when, in spite of group assimilation into the ironic subject, another party must involve themselves in opposition to the core group, a counterculture, if you will. Or, in simple terms, the common refrain for adult fans of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic was their ardent disavowal of bronies. Bronies, after all, are still ironic in spite of their assimilation. They're viewed as unpleasant or stereotyped as being big fat guys who smell and jerk off to horses. So, we have a new demographic that has to be subverted. And yet, functionally, this new demographic who defines themselves in opposition to bronies is the same one as before, just self-aware. So level 4 irony is a man who hates bronies who is still into My Little Pony. He observes an assimilated ironic group, in this case bronies, and must define himself in opposition while still participating. A meta-subversion. Level 5 irony is where the circle comes back around on our triangle of ironic authenticity to detached. In our My Little Pony example, we can see this quite a bit. People who are part of an ironic outgroup finding appreciation for the source material. After all, quite a few people who worked on My Little Pony worked on other shows. The creator, Lauren Faust, was a director on such shows as the Powerpuff Girls. Tara Strong, who voices many ponies, also works in other well-known shows. The artistry at play is newly appreciated, and the 5th level ironics gain a detachment from their ardent hatred of bronies. In other words, the meta-ironic group is normalized just like the bronies were normalized before. 6th level irony, then, circles around another time to earnestness. These are the people who incorporate My Little Pony Friendship is Magic into the vault of beloved cartoons, fueled by the show's own embrace of brony culture, who completely dissolve the subject into something else entirely. At this level, people begin making memes and media about ponies. There are even intricate spin-off fanfictions like Fallout Equestria that begin to take on a life of their own, and there are people who understand My Little Pony through social media memes alone. Now you have people who've seen the memes and understand who Twilight Sparkle are, and maybe even Derpy Hooves who have never seen a singular episode. The subject begins to bleed out. It's no longer just a show. It's a phenomenon, a meme in itself. It begins to exist as its constituent parts. Each level of irony incorporates the last. Now at these levels, there are articles being written about MLP. There are think pieces. Fans aren't just bronies, but cartoon aficionados. The work is elevated. The fans are elevated. Everything reeks of this questionable earnestness. How serious is this? Is this based on love? Are there seriously people making video essays about little girl shows? Was it ever really a little girl show to start with? Oh, but we're not done. Let's understand levels 1 through 3 as primary irony, the types of irony that deal directly with subjects and their viewers, and then levels 4 through 6 as meta-irony, dealing with viewers of a subject as well as the subject. These are the irony strata, and each one fills in one cycle of the earnestness triangle on its own. The stratum beyond meta-irony, then, are levels 7 through 9, or primary meta-irony. Level 7 irony begins when you have a single viewer who, upon internalizing an ironic subject and its ironic construction, can only ridicule it by indulging in the subject. Or, in a more salient example, imagine a guy who thinks bronies are stupid and that My Little Pony is a show for little girls. He, by virtue of thinking that, in spite of understanding the ironic layers at play, is operating in opposition to a new precedent with an old one. But critically, he might choose to watch the show himself just to see what all the fucking fuss is about. Someone who engages with a level of malice for the subject. This, of course, then, is a satirical style irony type. The detached form of primary meta-irony, then, is level 8. Imagine that same guy, enamored with how confusing the fan base on My Little Pony is, hosts an MLP watch party with his like-minded buddies. Maybe he puts it on in the background as a joke. Maybe he makes some obscure memes about it. He understands his own irony as well as the ironic layers of fans surrounding it, scoffing at them. And yet, this ironic viewer also enjoys these things in earnest. It's a surreal cognitive dissonance. It's often seen in fandoms that are understood to be bad, like Homestuck or Rick and Morty, where a viewer actively despises the fans of the work, but enjoys its media. The subject becomes iterated upon in a vacuum. And of course, the next level from that is earnest primary meta-irony, or level 9, the genuine enjoyment from the ironic indulgence in ironically enjoyed media, or The same guy eventually learning to love the characters from the memes he's made and tangential connection to the series. A guy who's not familiar with Twilight Sparkle, but he thinks more to Twi memes are funny. Now, you might have noticed that these irony strata also form their own triangle of earnestness, satire, detachment. The primary irony is irony in earnest, meta-irony is a satire of the already ironic, and primary meta-irony is a detachment from its ironic subject. Following this, the fourth strata, irony levels 10 through 12, is a return to the earnest strata, known as earnest irony, because primary meta-irony was too long. Irony level 10 would be someone who has experienced a subject only ironically and who gains a genuine affection for the work in opposition to the ironic mockery. Going off our MLP example here, let's imagine there's a kid whose only exposure to MLP is via internet memes and references that have already been shunted through 9 layers of irony. Then, that kid decides to watch MLP for real. That's level 10, an earnest enjoyment of a satirical subject. These people are, somehow, subverting obfuscation. It's impossible to watch this piece of media in the original context. Bronies are gone now, as are the haters and even the people who were detached, so the only thing to do is come back to the show again in earnest. This viewing of the subject through that new, fresh lens with expectation built through years of memes and iteration. Level 11, then, the detached form of this strata, is when a subject who earnestly enjoys an ironic assimilated subject begins to actively enjoy it as is. It's a dissolution of the irony entirely. The kid from before might host a watch party or show their friends the show, referring to it as the show bronies were into, now a passé media. It's a return to the honest enjoyment on the media's terms. Now that the brony in-jokes from the show are meaningless, the show is a fascinating study into something that is long gone. At the same time, the subject experiences a revival. New fans crop up to fuel more AO3 fix. And finally, Level 12, the final form of irony before the ironic subject twists itself back into earnest, unironic enjoyment of a subject. This level is concerned with pure fascination with the levels of irony at play. It's concerned with the revival of a subject from the ashes, a complete renewal of something that was totally lost and obscure. For instance, someone who had only ironic exposure to an ironic subject, who now enjoys that subject in earnest, references the subject free from its ironic context as an ironic statement. The disregard of irony for irony. Or, in a less insane way, the kid who only ever saw MLP memes and ironic references watches the show and enjoys it, then grows up to make a YouTube video detailing 12 arbitrary rules of irony using the original subject as a loose framework and posts it on the internet for people to enjoy, only tangentially related to the earnest double ironic subject of My Little Pony in the first place. Oh. Wow. So there it is, the 12 levels of irony. There might be more levels, but levels beyond this just start back at number 1. If you ever find yourself needing to reference how many levels of irony you are at any given time enjoying any particular subject, this video has helped you. However, I don't know of any situation where that need might arise. If you do, let me know. Anyway, I have to go lay down for a while. My head hurts.